388 new cases have also been confirmed. It now brings the death toll to 730 and the number of confirmed cases stands at 16,040. The Social Democrats have suggested they're likely to head towards the opposition benches. Co-leader Roisin Shortall says there's serious differences between her party, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. She also wants more assurances from the government as to how they'll pay for promises outlined in a framework document for government.
There is a very wide gap there at the moment, and for coalition governments to be successful, it's important that there is policy compatibility. That's it for now. More in an hour.
News Talk Weather.
Thanks to the AA. To help in these challenging times, we've reduced the cost of our car insurance. Get our lowest price at the AA.ie.
Mostly dry tonight with lowest temperatures of 3 and 8 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Hello there, you're very welcome along. On the show this evening, we're going to check in with boxer Eric Donovan. He is staving off the boredom, I'm sure, but he's doing so in a very positive way because he plans on raising a lot of money for a very good cause, the Do It For Dan cause. He's going to skip for 5 hours straight. I'm not quite sure how he plans to do that beyond skipping for 5 hours straight, but he's going to do it. So we'll talk to Eric Donovan this hour. After 8 o'clock, we will continue our history series with Professor Paul Rice. Very interesting one today, week 4. The origins of soccer and rugby in the UK. He's got loads of amazing facts and quirks of history and that. So that's on the way after 8. On the football show, Irish international Aidan O'Brien with us. And Nathan Murphy will also be along with some of the day's news. 53106 is the text number. We are at Off the Ball. Richie McCormack is there. Hello.
How are you, Joe? You well?
I am very well. Nathan Murphy also there. Hello.
Good evening.
So Eric Donovan coming up in the next half hour or so. We know Eric, 34 years of age now. Turned professional relatively recently, incredibly articulate man, deep thinker. He plans on raising money for Dan Donaher. The Do It For Dan campaign has been ongoing now for a couple of months at least. He was diagnosed with a very rare genetic neuromuscular disease and he needs very expensive treatment. I mean, it's really shocking how expensive the treatment is. There is a drug which is available and you can imagine just his ordinary parents in Laois, drug available in the US, the cost of which is just the $2.1 million. And he needs the treatment very urgently. He's just turned 1. The window for treatment is closing maybe in the next 12 months or so. And everybody is rallying around and trying to raise as much money as possible. And as of Sunday, April 19th, over $1 million had been raised, which is fantastic. Over 30,000 groups or individuals had made donations by April 19th, Sunday evening, which is just incredible, especially in the midst of what's going on. I would think it's an especially difficult time in some ways to raise money, but they've already got over $1 million. Hopefully they're closing in on $2 million, and Eric Donovan's going to play his part by skipping Nathan Murphy for 5 hours straight on Saturday.
What's the main difficulty with skipping for 5 hours straight?
You name it. You name it.
Is he guaranteeing that he won't trip himself up at any stage?
Oh, I think if he trips himself up, that's allowable. I think
do you have to start again? Is that another 5 hours?
No, I just think physically, as I understand it, I'll check with him later on, but JP, as I just mentioned, chatting to Eric Donovan earlier today, that the most he might have ever done is 2 hours.
Right, wow.
Even that is an insane amount of skipping. Yeah. Like, to be fair, I say that as somebody who was prescribed skipping as a child because for a while I was treated for having flat feet, which it subsequently turned out I did not actually have. You got to love doctors in the 80s. But one of the things they told me to do to rectify my problem of flat feet was to skip. So I had to go and buy a skipping rope in Tuttle's up in Roselawn. And you could find me of an afternoon up and down the path in Woodvale skipping.
I don't know where to start with that.
Doing it for 5 hours. Mad.
I look forward to when this is all over, but should we get all our sports people together for some sort of combined fundraiser where you have to do half an hour of press-ups followed by 2.5 hours of skipping, followed by a 20k run? It's some sort of new competition when all of this ends.
Do you know what we've done here? We've essentially, do you remember, was it Superstars was the old TV series that they used to have where Pat Spillane would yearly get a farmer's tan and compete against other sporting greats in the country? We've basically just sowed the seeds for that to be reborn and broadcast live on offtheball.com.
When this is all over, I want to watch normal sport again. But if you want to do that, Nathan, by all means. So
I do think it is quite incredible the amount of money that has been raised, because Dan's parents, Niall and Aisling, who are, I think, going to be on with us next week, were due on to talk about the fundraising the week that the coronavirus really blew up and the week the schools were off. And you'd be really worried at that stage that they had made such early strides with their fundraising, that people's minds were going to be focused elsewhere. Obviously, people are losing their jobs economically. People just don't have as much money, and there's so many different fundraisers because charities the length and breadth of the country have taken such a big hit. But the way that the GAA community in particular has come together, and both individuals, like look what the likes of Kieran Donaghy and Colm Cooper have done over the last few weeks, but club after club coming up with inventive ways of raising money within a 2K radius, whether it's, you know, running a marathon over the space of a week within your 2K, and to get over 1 million already, it's just brilliant the way people have put their hands in their pockets when they don't have as much in their pockets at the moment.
No, it's absolutely true. 30,000 groups or individuals have already made donations as of Sunday just gone. It is a complete scandal. I mean, I say this without knowing, I don't need to know anything more about whatever drug is on offer or whatever treatment is on offer. I don't know how it's $2 million. That is just a disgrace. But, well, we hope that the fundraising reaches that target very, very soon. On OTBAM tomorrow morning, Neil Tracy and Jack Anderson. Jack Anderson, a regular on the show. He's at the Melbourne Law School, formerly University of Limerick. They are tasked with deciding the Limerick Mount Rushmore, no less. Some of the contenders are, and I can't say I've seen all of these people in action, Mick and John Mackey, All-Irelands aplenty in the 1930s. Richie Bennett, obviously star player in the 1970s when Limerick dominated, and then managed Limerick famously in 07 to the All-Ireland final. I have Joe McKenna jotted down, 6-time All-Star. Eamon Cregan, another player from the 70s, who obviously did his thing then as a manager with Offaly. The 90s Limerick team jumped to mind for a lot of people, Kieran Carey, Gary Kirby, etc. The current team, let's not forget them. Any number of nominations there. Cian Lynch jumps to mind as one. Then you've got rugby. Paul O'Connell seems to be the first name on everybody's lips, but you've got O'Connell, you've got Conor Murray, a British and Irish line, Keith Earls, John Hayes, David Wallace, and so on. We have Jerry McLaughlin as well, another former and British and Irish line. Andy Lee, world champion. Not many counties produce a boxing world champion. For me, that looms very large, I must say. And then just all-round legend, which is, I mean, I don't know what criteria people use, but somehow that kind of stuff seems important. Steve Finnan.
Yeah.
Champions League winner. Again, we said it last night or the other night, Richie, for Kevin Doyle. If you play in the Premier League, if you're doing things on an international level, it's very hard to compare that with the GAA folk who are offering something very different.
If you've won a Champions League and gone to a World Cup, I mean, that's enough for me.
Okay.
You know, that's incredible stuff.
He did move when he was very young to London, I think. Nobody did, though.
Listen, Gilbert O'Sullivan is still from Waterford, no matter how many years he spent in Swindon and then subsequently in Jersey, right? Steve Finnan is a Limerick man and he counts as being in Limerick's Hall of Fame.
On the Off the Ball article earlier, I saw this as a mark against him. So I'm just putting that out there. Don Givens was mentioned, and then quite a few Limerick folk who really know their sport mentioned Al Finucane as well, who had 11 Ireland caps, but he had 637 League of Ireland appearances. It was a big Limerick FC man. And then there's Yvonne Tracy, treble winner with Arsenal, Conor Nyland in tennis, Roisin Upton, part of the Ireland hockey team. JB McManus mentioned again, but let's not even discuss that. That's just not happening. Right, Nathan, give me your guaranteed names already chiselled on Mount Rushmore, regardless of the discussion tomorrow. Who's definitely up there?
You know, it's rare that I listen into the Newsround and I nod along frantically and furiously with the two of you, but I was agreeing a lot when it came to Kevin Doyle. As we go through these Mount Rushmores, I think footballers are going to be very hard done by, and that there will be a disproportionate amount of GAA people. Now, I say that having included 3 GAA people on the male Mount Rushmore, but also 1 footballer as well. I totally agree that people who get to the very top of playing in the Premier League, it is an achievement all in itself. But what are you judging on? Is it legendary status? And I think actually every county's own individual sport comes into it. So I think, for example, in Mayo, football is the main sport. Likewise in Limerick, I think Limerick rugby, I would have 2 rugby players there. So I think that the nailed on are Paul O'Connell and Andy Lee. I think 100% they are getting on. Then you will need a GAA person. So I didn't see McMackey. He was on the team at the Millennium. Where are you going? Who's choosing? Neil Tracy is, like, he's never seen McMackey. So do you go with one of the modern players like Cian Lynch? Do you go with someone like Declan Hannon, who's been there that little bit longer, but maybe not quite as iconic in Limerick? So I think there'll be one hurler. I'll let the Limerick people choose that themselves. But I think there should be 2 rugby players on this.
And is Steve Finnan on your Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, maybe I should contradict myself. Again, for what he achieved, yes, in a way, he has to be. But do you associate Finnan with Limerick?
No.
The way you associate Kilban with Mayo?
No.
Or Doyle with Wexford?
No.
At least Steve Finnan's actually from Limerick.
I think, well, what do you judge being from? His heart.
But
Kilban's heart is very much from Mayo.
I mean, if we're thinking this is the problem. People will have different criteria for Mount Rushmore. It's not just about achievement. It's why GAA might be overrepresented. It's also about, it's a representation of that county in sporting terms. And nobody looks at Steve Finnan and thinks, Limerick. You just don't. It's not a representation of Limerick. We're not doing a ranking of the top 4 highest achieving Limerick people. We're doing the Mount Rushmore, which has an extra layer to it.
There's a mystique involved, and I think that's where they got it wrong with Kevin Doyle. I think Wexford people were incredibly proud of what Kevin Doyle achieved because he was from Wexford, because they felt like he was representing them. I'm not quite sure that was there, rightly or wrongly, with Steve Finnan, which is why I think with Limerick, it is very much rugby country. And take your pick of either Conor Murray or John Hayes.
Okay. There is a question saying, how can you have Kilban eligible and put a question mark against Finnan? Retract, Joe. Well, I didn't say that. Richie said that. But I sort of get it as well.
I left off Martin Sheridan, which I know Paul Rouse was questioning, considering, well, listen, he is the foremost historical sporting mind in the country, so why wouldn't he? But part of Mayo and having 3 GA players there is that it is the mystique, it is the folklore, it is the legend, it is the near misses. That is part of the county. So I think they deserve to be there. And every county will have its own special criteria. So that's why I think just with Limerick, I would have 2 rugby, 1 hurling, the legend of Andy Lee, and that unfortunately Steve Finnan is going to miss out. But by and large, I think there should be more footballers on the list.
No, I would agree with that massively. I think if you've played in the Premier League, and again, I'm contradicting myself slightly here, but certainly if you've won a Champions League and played for Liverpool, then you should be on the list. I don't know. I need to rethink Steve Finnan for a minute. I really do, because I do feel Premier League footballers here are going to be overlooked in a terrible way. Lads, the parochial voters will resent the Steve Finnans of the world for taking the soup and carving out a career in England as opposed to the lads hurling at the crossroads back home, says Niall. How was Aidan O'Brien not included in the Wexford? Oh, geez, we can't get back into this.
They're
stuck
right
in
though,
Limerick.
Joe. This person, whoever this person is texting, and it wasn't me because I can't look at my phone, is 100% right. Aidan O'Brien should be on the Wexford Mount Rushmore.
It's Micheál O'Donoghue, so I don't know if it's the Micheál O'Donoghue. How was Aidan O'Brien not included in the Wexford Mount Rushmore? His record on a global level is nearly unparalleled. I didn't hear Gizzy and Liam Griffin or their rationale, but I think, and I'm taking this through JP, he may have misquoted them ever so slightly, but I think there was a sense, well, he trained horses, and that's not
do all the work.
Not a true sports person. I think that was the criteria. But also, they're 2 hurling men who wanted GAA on Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, I think the criteria were for Gizzy and for Liam Griffin. They're 2 hurling men, so that was going to dominate things.
Well, look, that's Limerick tomorrow morning. So Neil Tracy, abuse him. That's the overriding
Justice
message.
for Steve Finnan. Justice for Steve Finnan.
Yeah, I'm going to give. I think we need to.
It's very tight. I just think, again, if you're looking at a Limerick Mount Rushmore, if people were arriving from around the world, I think even Limerick people would be looking, going, "Who's that?"
I think Mayo people would be thinking the same at Kilban, to be fair, Nathan.
There's not a single person in Mayo who doesn't know that Kevin Kilban, that his roots, that his heart is very much set in Mayo. But there's any amount of part of what I thought with Mayo was, say, somebody like Gavin Duffy. So Gavin Duffy has an incredibly successful rugby career, plays rugby for Ireland. If he'd stayed playing GAA, he probably would have played the middle of midfield for Mayo for 12, 13 years, played in 3 All-Ireland finals, which would have been better for getting on the Mount Rushmore.
Mayo midfield all day long. No question.
Not necessarily right.
No, it's Mount Rushmore is also a feeling. It's a feeling, Nathan. You stand
Rushmore
over
is a feeling.
I'm pretty sure that's exactly what I said.
Oh God!
When you want to defend yourself, you go, look, it's just something inside you.
It's just something
Can't
you
explain
feel.
it.
Yeah.
Something inside so strong. It's the pure rock of Mount Rushmore.
Start the news round, Richie, and this is not surprising news, but at least there's clarity on mass gatherings, and this extends clearly to sport.
You say clarity, Joe. The chances of this year's All-Ireland Championships being played have slimmed. The government has agreed to extend the ban on mass gatherings in the country until August 31st. That's gatherings requiring a licence of over 5,000. The start of this year's championships are already postponed, while the association say they haven't yet discussed playing games behind closed doors. In the past 20 minutes or so, the FAI have sought clarity from the government as regards that extension of the ban on mass gatherings, and specifically the number of people to 5,000, because that, you would imagine, would open the door for some League of Ireland action to resume, given the attendances of most League of Ireland grounds. But the GAA tonight seeking clarity on that. You can find that full story in quotes from Gary Owens, the interim CEO, on offtheball.com. The World Anti-Doping Agency are to decide if James Cronin's 1-month ban is sufficient. The Munster prop tested positive for 2 banned substances after November's Heineken Champions Cup game away to Racing. A third-party dispensing error by a pharmacy was the reason for Cronin's failed test. But as part of WADA's standard procedure, they'll review the full written judgment.
Certainly it could have been worse for him. We detailed the case at length at the top of the show last night. It was just breaking news, and we went through the written judgment as best we could in full. We'll talk about it tomorrow with Rory O'Connor as well. But certainly, as we touched on last night, Richie, the way this works is it's a 4-year ban if this is deemed deliberate and willful. It's 2 years if it's not deemed intentional, but then mitigating circumstances come into effect. And there were numerous examples. We gave a couple yesterday of, there was a 6-month ban for, I think it was Ashley Johnson, who took his wife's weight loss pills by accident. There was Marin Cilic, who took glucose pills, which were bought mistakenly by his mother. He got 4 months. And then there was the world champion skier who was given 18 months because she used cream on her lips. She had blisters on her lips. She got sunburned skiing, and she got 18 months, up from 13 months. They felt 13 was too lenient. In her case, apparently there was very clear packaging that this contravened the WADA prohibited list. So she got 18 months. So 1 month certainly is what it could have been worse for James Cronin, you'd say that much. We'll talk about the case tomorrow in a bit more depth with Rory O'Connor. UEFA, meanwhile?
Yeah, the FAI say the Republic of Ireland's Euro playoff with Slovakia is likely to be played in October. It follows a video conference today that involved all 55 member nations. The FAI say the Nations League is set to begin in September, according to UEFA guidance today. Meanwhile, UEFA has changed its stance on allowing domestic league and cup competitions to be cancelled. European football's governing body still strongly recommends that associations should try and complete the current campaign, but it's also agreed to hear special cases where it would be better to end the season due to the coronavirus pandemic. Scotland could well fall under that latter category.
Where is this all going to finish, Nathan?
Well, I just thought that it was interesting what Gary Owens and the FAI, that statement just a few minutes ago about the ban on large events until the beginning of September, because they're talking about 9 games between September, October, November for international football. You'd imagine 4 or 5 of them will be at home. The FAI will desperately need the revenue that those games bring. And already, and you can see where the concern is, how do you go from a situation where you're not allowed gatherings of over 5,000 on the 30th of August, yet there's probably going to be games right at the beginning of September in Dublin where they want 51,000 people, Stephen Kenny's first games, completely sold out. And are they going to be in a position to host those games? So I don't think we're going to have any clarity on that for a long time to come. And again, I think people are probably a little bit obsessed with the numbers because they're trying to flip it and say, well, League of Ireland under 5,000. Like, technically, you could host games in Croke Park and have 1 in every 20 seats filled, and you have 4,000 people there. Like, that's safer than a League of Ireland game with 4,000 people and they're crammed into a tiny, tiny little space, or into 1/4 of a ground at Dalymount Park. So I think there's probably a lot of obsession with the numbers. I can't see any events taking place between now and the end of August with any sort of a substantial crowd at all. It just doesn't make sense.
No, and I think you make a great point on the space between people. Like, it's not just the numbers, it's how close everybody is together, and that's key.
Like,
if you can have a gathering of 5,000 people, does anyone feel great about having a gathering of 4,458 people?
No, and how can that be safe depending on the size of the ground? I think what people would like to see, probably when the initial shock of this, is that we can get back to some form of local sport between now and then, whether that's kids getting back to playing under 10 and under 12 and under 14 matches, and maybe some senior games at a very, very local level in front of very sparse crowds. But that's probably as much as we can hope for the summer, unfortunately.
Yeah. Richie, Olympics?
Yeah, organisers of the Tokyo Games and the IOC are in dispute over who'll pay for the postponement of the Games by a year because of the coronavirus pandemic. Media reports in Japan estimate that the costs of moving the event to next year could be up to €7 billion.
€7 billion?
€7 billion. I feel like I should have put my pinky to my lips while saying that one, but yeah, 7 billion's the number.
Okay. Amnesty International are getting involved in the Newcastle situation.
Yeah, they've written to Premier League Chief Executive Richard Masters regarding the potential takeover of Newcastle. The bid is led by Saudi's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Amnesty say the Premier League is in danger of becoming a patsy, they say, for regimes with terrible human rights records, of which Saudi Arabia is, of course, one.
I don't suspect the Premier League are going to intervene or draw the line here, Nathan. I'd be very surprised.
Well, I think at the best of times, you would have been surprised if the Premier League would intervene, but a potential injection of cash to any of their clubs is probably what they're looking for. Now, everything that's happened in the oil markets over the last 24 hours may change that somewhat as to the availability of funds to Newcastle. But the Premier League have never shown any signs that they're willing to really intervene in terms of who owns their clubs. Keep the money rolling.
John in Limerick mentions Sam Lynch, world champion rower. Don't overlook him either for Limerick Mount Rushmore. Connor in Limerick says, Limerick Mount Rushmore, Richard Harris, Munster Senior Cup winner with Gary on. Well, I'd have no objections. I mean, if Mount Rushmore is what you feel, then YouTube knows if they suggest me a Richard Harris interview, I just can't resist it. They have me clocked from a couple of miles off.
The love of JP McManus in Limerick is truly a remarkable thing. Like, we've thankfully in the GA never gone to the Super Bowl style presenting the owner of the franchise. But I suspect Limerick people wouldn't have a major problem if the next time they win the Lee McCarthy, if JP went up and collected it.
I suspect you're not too far off, yeah. Front and centre. Who in Mayo would get it?
It's hard to know. Well, it doesn't matter who should get it. Michael Ring would get it. 100%. Pushing whoever it is out of the way.
Sheffield United, meanwhile, where are they, Richie?
Yeah, Sheffield United's players have followed the lead of their manager Chris Wilder by agreeing to a wage deferral until the end of 2020. Despite the squad being one of the lowest paid in the Premier League, the move will make it easier for the Bromley club to navigate the financial impact of the coronavirus pandemic and its subsequent shutdown. Senior backroom staff and Chief Executive Stephen Bettis also agreed a 10% deferral for the next 6 months. Arsenal, as we know, also agreeing to 12.5% cuts, mostly among that squad in the past 24 hours.
Yeah, Mesut Ozil, one of the key exceptions. We'll talk about that on the football show, Nathan, and we'll actually touch on this story as well. It involves Paul McShane.
Yeah, an Accrington Stanley player has been banned for 8 games for abusing former Republic of Ireland defender Paul McShane. Sam Finlay admitted to verbally abusing the Rochdale defender during a meeting of the sides on New Year's Day.
Yeah, not great. We'll detail some of what he was saying, and he's been given a ban. You kind of thought some of this stuff was of a bygone era over there, but clearly not. And meanwhile, the Camp Nou, I didn't really see this coming. I would have thought money here is going to charity, but go on.
Yeah. Barcelona are to sell the naming rights for the Camp Nou to aid the fight, they say, against COVID-19. The measure will only be in place for 1 year, with the entire proceeds going to the club's foundation for social charities. The Camp Nou has been open since 1957 and has never had a sponsor. They have, however, been floating the idea of getting a stadium sponsor involved from, I think, about 2023 onwards for an obscene amount of cash up front to get the place renovated. So I think this might set the ball rolling on that, with a charitable start to it. Okay,
this will soften the way. I've always been a new Camp man. I can't fully say Camp Nou without...
You're not a proper Catalan, Joe.
Was it Graham Hunter who introduced that into the Irish vocabulary?
I think it was, really, yeah.
I think it most definitely was.
It's the new camp. I mean, I know it's nice. I know it's the Camp Nou, but it's never quite worked for me. On that important point, we'll move on. Huh?
Some of us just like being right. That's fine.
Well, you're a Camp Nou, aren't you? You're a hipster.
I am, yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
It's not a hipster to be correct.
It sort of is.
It's not a hipster to be correct.
I just think if I was sitting there having a couple of mates and we're having a drink, and one of them was like, "Where's the first leg on?" And someone said the Camp Nou. Joe. I think I'd be kind of thinking.
Well, see, Joe.
No. I would be thinking Joe, you're a bit of a tryhard.
No. You see, Joe, that's the difference between me and you. I don't have friends.
That's why.
Nathan, if you asked where the first leg was on and your mate said the Camp Nou.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I would be saying, who do you think you are, Graham Hunter?
Exactly. It's the new camp.
If you're Graham Hunter.
It's the new camp, all right? In all future correspondence, Richie, we're calling it the new camp. We've decided.
Graham Hunter knows his tunes. Graham Hunter knows his stadium names.
Well, I'll give you that. Any last story you want to bring us before we go?
Yes, Serge Aurier has become the latest player from Tottenham to flout government guidelines in the UK after posting even a video of himself training with teammate Moussa Sissoko. The right back was wearing a mask. He's now deleted the content from his Instagram story, which showed him running shuttles and disregarding social distancing. Spurs hit the headlines a couple of weeks ago after Jose Mourinho was pictured holding a one-on-one training session with Tanguy and Ndombele. This is actually the second time that Aurier has done that, because I think he escaped most of the limelight at the time that Ndombele and Mourinho were caught out, because he also posted an Instagram story at the time running side by side with somebody I think was in that same Barnet Park. So Serge Aurier in trouble again at Spurs.
The disconnect with reality / the stupidity here is quite staggering, Nathan.
There's no possibility that they live together.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That
They have
sharing
since
a house or an
apologised.
apartment.
They have since apologised, which suggests that they know that they shouldn't have been out, which suggests that they're not actually living together. So,
Well, if they're not living together, as you say, there's a massive disconnect from reality. But also, they were already caught 2 weeks ago. How stupid can you be? Like, clearly the newspapers, who have got a lot of photographers with not a lot to do, or go to this park for some reason. Even this 2 weeks ago, when Mourinho and Ndombele are there, and they just happen to run in to Aurier. Like, come on.
No, not ideal. Tom Brady, finally.
Yeah, funny story, this one, on a kind of a similar level to the Spurs one. Tom Brady was asked to leave a Tampa Bay park in which he was training as it closed during the coronavirus pandemic. Tampa Bay Mayor Jane Castor revealed that the 42-year-old was cited by a patrol officer. The individual was recognised as Brady, who received no special treatment. Brady, of course, we know, joined the Buccaneers from the New England Patriots.
Very good. Richie, thank you. That is the news round for this evening. Text in from Dave wondering if we've any early thoughts on The Last Dance. Anyone watched an episode or two just yet?
Haven't got to it yet.
No, tonight.
I watched the first episode and a little bit of the second. It's very good. Yeah, this is good. This is going to be great. Yeah, really, really good. Scottie Pippen, disgracefully underpaid. Did you know all this? Is this infamous about Scottie Pippen?
No.
Okay, so Scottie Pippen in 1991, he's a top draft, and he signs with the Bulls. And he signs a 7-year deal, and even the Bulls owner says to him, I'm not sure you should be signing a deal for this long. But anyway, he does. And so by the time 97 comes around, 7 years later, even though Scottie Pippen is like either number 1 or number 2 in the league for virtually everything, right on Jordan's heels, he is the 6th worst paid player in the Bulls, and he's the 122nd highest paid player in the NBA, period. And he's just been completely scammed, really. I mean,
I think his wife
himself.
posted a picture. I think his wife posted a picture on Twitter after the first episode the other night, suggesting it might have been a picture of their property at some level, saying that he did okay. So I don't think we should worry about him too much.
No, it's true. I was straight onto Google, and I think he subsequently put that right. But they were saying he could have had 10 times what he earned in that period. But that's only a minor point. On the whole, it's brilliant. Yeah, really good start. And there was a lot of hype about that, so I'd recommend it. It's on Netflix. Fellas, thank you. Richie, thanks a million. Nathan back on the football show, and we're going to talk to Eric Donovan next.
I'm sorry, you can sit there and look and play with all your silly machines as much as you like.
What does that mean?
Fit to split?
I don't really know what you mean.